It was a fun time. Lots of interesting things I learned.
Yeah.
All right, let me make sure I got the right ones.
All right, I'm going to bring that on screen. Christopher, thanks so much for your time. I'm going to let you take it away.
Perfect. All right, great. So, good morning, everyone. Really appreciate your time. I'm super excited to be chatting about something that's, very near and dear to me, which is pen testing itself. So, there's a ton of interest in the community about, how to get into pen testing and all of that. So, we're going to be covering a lot of that. This particular talk isn't necessarily about the technical sides of pen testing, or we're not dropping any 0 days, or showing how to like hack into everything. It's more about the professional side of how to do it as a career and how to get paid to do it long term. So very excited to do this, and let's go ahead and jump right in. So, what I'm going to be talking about is a little bit about myself. Again, why pen testing is interesting, and why it's a popular career. Then we'll talk about why it's hard to get hired into pen testing. Um, a little bit about successful traits, and the traits that I see in people that do very well in pen testing, and traits that I see in people that struggle to do well in pen testing. We'll talk a little bit about skill development, reporting, and then just kind of an overall summary of what we did today. I got a lot of stuff to talk about, so this is going to be a very fast 30 minutes, but I'm more than happy to answer questions at the end as well. So, getting into it, a little bit about myself. My name is Chris Haller. I'm a principal security consultant at Omada Technologies. I live up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Absolutely love it. Grew up in New England, so super happy to be back in this area after my Navy time. I did 11 years with the Navy. 8 of those were active duty. I did 4 years out in Whidbey Island, Washington, with VAQ 130. That was doing sysadmin work. And then I did another 4 years active at NCDOC, which is the Navy Cyber Defense Operations Command out of Suffolk, Virginia. That was a ton of fun because that was my first taste of cyber when I was done doing kind of sysadmin work. And I thought when I grew up, I was going to do sysadmin work for my career because I loved it, loved the computers, setting things up. And then I got a taste of cyber, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is so much more fun. And there's no trouble tickets that I need to be handling as well. So between there, I did about 2 years in CTI work as well when I got off active duty. And then I've been doing pen testing, red teaming, purple teaming full time for about 5 years now. So I did some time with the IRS red team as well during that period that I'm in over the last 5 years. It's been a lot of fun, very rewarding. And I'm super thankful to have the chance to do the sysadmin work before getting into the cyber side, because that really helps solidify my knowledge. And I'm also very glad that I had a chance to do the blue team work in the incident response before getting into the red team side, because two sides of the same coin. And when we continue to see the same attacks and the same exploits happen over and over in different environments, it is so personally, professionally rewarding on my end to be able to go in and actually show and demonstrate what those risks are to the customer, and then help us fix them before the bad people do. So I really like doing this work in that manner, and being able to do that. Um, More about myself: I have way too many certifications. The one I'm the most proud of is GSE number 329. That I'm very proud of doing that, and constantly getting new SANS ones, because I'm enrolled in the SANS Technology Institute with SANS EDU. Just finished up a grad cert in industrial control system security. Probably going to be starting the purple team one next, so we'll see. And I am also a coach for the U.S. Cyber Team. I'm the attack defense coach, and what we do is we go compete in international cyber competitions on behalf of the U.S. So the team was over in Warsaw, Poland, a few weeks ago for the European Cybersecurity Championship, and in a few weeks we are flying out to Tokyo for the International Cybersecurity Challenge. And that one I'm very excited for. We've been training almost a full year for this particular one, and got big high hopes on how the team's going to do. So I've been doing that for about 3 years. Very rewarding to be able to help mentor and train the junior athletes and players and individuals on the team. I really like talking about this stuff and very passionate about, what the technical work is, and then, finding that practical approach instead of theory for this kind of work too, right? Because again, we can do anything in theory, but unless we can actually show practicality behind it, then it turns into a lot of that kind of security theater in the meantime. So I wrote a book. It got published. I was co-authored with one of my other university professors, who's also a coach for the U.S. Cyber team. So that one got released last August, I believe. And then I'm planning on getting a new book together too, but you'll have to stay tuned and see what that one's about. So getting into kind of, offensive security as a whole, right? What we're looking at is there's a bunch of different types of terms. So if you're interested in getting into this space, or even if you're on the vendor side of like, okay, my organization needs to buy some of these things for some kind of compliance requirements, you definitely want to know what the difference is. So we have things like vulnerability scans, pen test, purple team, red team, and adversary emulation. The ones we are the most interested in is obviously pen testing, because that's something that we're talking about today, and that's where we are actually doing not only just the scanning from like things with vulnerability scanners, but also trying to prove out exactly what that level of risk is, and trying to combine and escalate some of those vulnerabilities together, and really demonstrate what a realistic impact is uh, from someone that actually could try to do this kind of work. So things like vulnerability scanning, vulnerability assessments, it's really just running a scanner, interpreting the results, and then giving that to a customer. There's no like pulling those together, or demonstrating what those risks actually are, as far as what the scanner doesn't already give you. Purple teaming is my favorite to do, just because it is so highly collaborative, and we are actually working together with teams. And it's not to say that we don't do that in like the pen testing, but the doing it in the purple team capacity allows us to really usually just all sit in the same room and just walk through with the blue team and see how their tools are reacting in real time, so that we can actually go through and make those changes while we're on site doing work together. And then red teaming, adversary emulation, is extremely highly evasive kind of work. And what we're doing is testing the blue team to see if they are catching and reacting to the intrusions properly or not. So one important thing to understand is that most customers generally are not ready for a red team, even though they'll say they need to buy a red team, or they want a red team. That's usually because they've never actually had a real pen test before. Usually, in my experience, these kind of customers have only had just a vulnerability scan with, a custom label put on top, and it was sold as a pen test. But then, we'll get into the environment and actually look and see all these huge gaping holes that, these other companies didn't find. And so doing something like a red team is extremely high in that maturity scale. And it does take a long time for organizations to get to that point, even if they feel like they are already or not. Now, what we want to look at is, you as a pen tester, and why do you want to be a pen tester, right? It's a very sexy job. Everybody loves it, right? Like, you get to tell everybody that you get to hack into stuff, and that it's the cool hacker man cyber stuff, right? Like, it's the kind of thing that when you tell your grandma you work with computers, she thinks about the hackers breaking into stuff, right? And then obviously we got shows like Mr. Robot, which romanticize it and make it look really cool, which it is super cool. It's a really fun job, and I like it the most because it really gets to help people and help companies and organizations. And again, this really goes back to that idea of there are so many intrusions, more than there's ever been, more data breaches, and there's also more tools and security controls in place than there have ever been. So it's really finding that realistic risk and actually showing people like, okay, when this pen testing is done the right way, where it's threat informed and actually goes through scenarios that the bad people do, then we can find these big holes and actually demonstrate, like, here's what a realistic risk of a threat actor in your environment would be able to do, not just run Nessus and throw a label on it, right? So it is very technical work, and that requires a very strong foundation of understanding what those technical requirements are. So if we don't have a strong foundation of how things like traditional network protocols are built and operate, it is very difficult for us to give realistic and accurate recommendations on how to reduce risk unless we fully understand how all those pieces move together. So one fun way to think about it is kind of like a home inspector, right? So pen testers are very similar to home inspectors because what we're doing is we're looking for weaknesses and giving recommendations, and we're getting paid for that knowledge, right? And when you hire someone like a home inspector to look at a house before you buy it, you expect them to have a certain level of knowledge, right? Traditionally, most home inspectors have either built houses in the past or have been, some kind of contractor, and they know building code inside and out. So, having all of that background in that knowledge is absolutely crucial to make sure that we can actually determine the overall health of that building and what it looks like, what things need to be prioritized, and why. So, we place a lot of trust in home inspectors. I know I did when I bought my house because I don't know what I'm looking for or what kind of things are important or are not. And it's an issue because when we place all of that trust into someone like a home inspector, the first time that there's an obvious flaw or something that they either didn't read or is completely incorrect, then that throws everything else into question. The entire inspection. Like, how do I know if you actually did find everything or if all of these other findings actually make sense or not? So think about it like this, right? We hire a home inspector. He comes into my house, goes into the basement, uses a radon testing, equipment, right? And then he comes back up and he goes, "I am so sorry. This little radon kit, it tells me that you have a lethal level of radon in your basement, and you should probably be dead by now." First time you hear that, you're going to go, "Oh my God, what is happening? How could this possibly be in my house? Where did this come from?" Right? And then the inspector goes, "Okay, don't worry. I got another tool. I'm going to bring it down there and check." So he goes down, runs that second tool for the radon, right? Comes back up the stairs and he goes, "All right, this second tool, it says that you don't have a basement." The second time you hear that, right? You're going to go, "Who the hell is this guy?" Are we paying him money to tell us this stuff? Like, immediately, everything, all credibility is immediately shot. It's gone. Like, forget it. I'm not trusting anything in that report that comes after that, right? So, same thing from the technical side. We have so much of that credibility that we have to protect, and there's so much trust in the work we do and making sure that we actually protect organizations by doing it that way. Now, the state of pen testing in 2025, from my observations, most pen testing consultancies actually do not do a very good job at it at all. I'd say an easy 80% of the ones that I've seen cannot deliver anywhere even remotely close to the quality that a customer actually needs. And this is because they do a lot of things like overpromising and under-delivering, classic sales, right? But then, we see a lot of other problems like production assets being taken down because the people doing the testing are not familiar with the tools that they're using, or it's extremely poorly trained technical individuals that don't have any kind of IT or developer sysadmin experience, so they don't even know what they're testing or understand how it's supposed to be used. A lot of times what I see are organizations or testing consultancies contracting out to third parties that are in third world countries to do the work for them. And then they don't tell the customer that either. So the customer has someone from Ukraine connecting to their internal network, and like, oh, whoopsie, consultancy didn't tell you because you didn't force us to tell you that we have to use W-2 employees for everything. So insane, right? And then I see a lot of pen testers that cannot troubleshoot technical issues. They can't accurately describe impacts of a finding. And then it's a worrisome amount of pen testers that run scanners and then copy paste things into ChatGPT, and that's literally it. It's absolutely terrifying to see that kind of stuff now. And so I have a lot of stories about bad pen testing that I've seen over the years. One of the worst was seeing something. One of my customers told me about a previous experience where they paid for an internal pen test in their environment, and the pen testing company, the individual running the actual pen test, used a cracked version of Cobalt Strike that they pulled from GitHub, and it was infected by a named threat actor. So this person actually was running that infected version of Cobalt Strike because it was cracked, so they didn't have to pay for it, and it developed into a full-fledged named threat actor uh, infection inside of that customer's environment because the pen tester was doing it. And my God, can you imagine just the level of distrust that that organization has now for anyone that they have to pay to do it? And obviously they hate it, absolutely hate it. Most organizations do because they don't see the value for it. There's all these false positives in the reporting. Usually there's almost no prioritization or context inside of findings. Um, a lot of these organizations are required contractually or through compliance requirements to have a pen test, but they just keep getting these $20,000 Nessus reports that they pay for, and it's 800 to 1,000 findings that they don't even have time or information on what to start with. And in my experience, the customers and the sysadmins and the security individuals on the customer side, they want to love it, they want to be tested, and they want to have that knowledge on how to do things better. It's just they've had such a horrible experience of getting kicked in the face over and over for years that that's what they come to expect, and it turns into this us versus them mentality of like, man, these guys are trying to get us fired or just trying to make us look bad. And it's all about like, hey man, we're here to do things together, right? We want to make things better and improve security, reduce risk. So I have a lot more stories of bad pen testing, but not enough time to get through them today. So as far as how to get hired, how to get started doing this kind of work, it is really hard to get hired into pen testing or break into that offensive security, just because it is so highly desired and so many people want to do it because again, it's Mr. Robot, Hacker Man, sexy cyber stuff, right? And it's also important to understand that entry level pen testing needs to be that mid level career overall because you are expected to have such a high level of knowledge and background in how to these things operate at a foundational level that we need to be able to lean on that information in order to give those security recommendations. Like, how can we possibly give recommendations on security if we don't even understand what we're securing, right? And it's really hard because without having that, there's not much you can lean back on, right? It's not to say that you can't, as much as it is harder to do it without, right? What I tend to see too is that a lot of these entry level pen testers that want to break into offensive security really struggle with the technical skills. And this is something as simple as just tell me what the difference between TCP and UDP is. And it is mind blowing because 75% of the people I've interviewed can't answer that question. It is completely unbelievable. And, the people that do get past that, a lot of them struggle to get things like approaching a system from a holistic view, we're giving that like full information, that full view of a risk on a finding, right? So like, what does this look like altogether? And then, beyond that, we have all the soft skills of like fusion intelligence, right? Because we're gathering pieces of information through the reconnaissance throughout the entire testing experience. So we have to fuse that all together so that we can see like, okay, what does this look like as a whole? How does this particular finding fit into there? What does this mean like holistically to the customer? Realistic recommendations, right? Like, man, you can tell a customer to remove NTLM from their network, right? You can tell them that it's honestly not realistic. It is best practice, but as far as implementing that, it is a lot of time and a lot of effort, and it might not necessarily even be, necessary depending on what other controls are in place. And then reporting and communication is the number one soft skill, the most important one that we really need to drive home the most because everything comes down to reporting at the end of the day. Again, remember, if that home inspector, it doesn't matter how good of a job they do, if they don't give you a report showing and giving pictures of things that happen and recommendations from it, right? All right. So successful traits, the things that I tend to see most successful for pen testers are the most successful breakers are the builders. So these are the people that actually have gone through and built systems and configured routers, configured switches, know how to capture PCAP, have built websites, have configured a domain controller. Like the people that have actually put all these things together really gives you that background and that understanding for when you approach it from a security perspective of trying to break it, right? Like, okay, I can understand kind of why or what they did to get to this point or make this misconfiguration. So having that background is absolutely a huge benefit, and what I tend to see in most of the successful pen testers. And then knowing how to write scripts and when to write scripts saves a ton of time and it makes the testing go either much smoother or have that correct level of coverage that the customer expects. Successful pen testers read documentation. There's really nothing else to be said about that, right? Like you have to read the documentation. Absolutely rock solid on the technical fundamentals. You can talk through everything from layer one all the way up through, layer seven. And then specifically, we spend a lot of time on layer two or layer three. And really, you need to be able to talk about like what those things mean and why it would be important to review inside of a network and looking at PCAP, right? And then having that curious personality, always kind of pulling on threads and asking the why and the how for a finding or information. And when you are very successful at doing this in a pen testing perspective, you are implicitly driving value to your employer and to the customer, right? If you have to explicitly tell them, oh, I'm absolutely worth this much money because of this, like, okay, sure, but the best ones are the ones where they just knock everyone's socks off because they are the builders. They know how to script things. They can actually ask and pull on those threads to see the why and the how. And it really drives that change inside of the reports to help reduce risk. Now, on the flip side, people who struggle, I tend to see a lot of pen testers that are missing fundamental understanding about network protocols, about how websites work, about how, like just information in general flows inside of IT or an application, right? And generally, these people don't have any kind of sysadmin help desk or developer experience. And that's not to say that, you need that as much as it's much more difficult if you don't have that background to lean on to kind of give some of those fundamental information. Pen testers who struggle really have an over reliance on tools and they can't develop their own tools. So it's them just leaning into exactly what Nessus says and then not going any further than that. And then I've run into a lot of pen testers that simply can't read error messages in front of them, telling them exactly what is wrong and how to fix it. They just saw an error message and didn't even think about it. And sadly, we see so many people offload their critical thinking to AI these days. It is absolutely wild just how little analysis is going into these kinds of things. And it is just scary, really, because when you offload your thinking to AI, like, why is the customer even paying you at that point when they could just ask ChatGPT to do it, right? So getting into a little bit more on AI, like Nico Deckens has a really interesting article about the slow collapse of critical thinking in OSINT. And one of my favorite parts in that article is to use AI as a thought partner and not as an oracle. So it's again, AI is a phenomenal tool, absolutely excellent tool. I love it, and I hate it at the same time because I see so many people offloading their critical thinking to it instead of using it as that thought partner. All right, so I think we only have about 5 more minutes, so I'm going to go really fast through the rest of these slides. So, what makes you special as far as demonstrating value for resumes? Things I'm looking for on like the hiring side is I'm looking for background. Again, you don't have to have that IT software developer or sysadmin experience, but it really does help to have that. And you absolutely do need to show that you have those rock solid fundamentals. I love looking at projects, things published on GitHub or scripts showing that someone is a builder. CTFs are one of my favorite things because it shows that someone is actually practical in solving things and doing these things. So if you haven't looked at the Meta CTF that is going on for VetSecCon, please check it out. I can't recommend it enough. Bug bounties are great as long as you go into bug bounties not expecting to win money from it. You can learn a lot from doing it and looking at that. And then developing challenges is good too. And I really like the write-ups. Reading through a write-up that someone did of a CTF challenge or some kind of lab really helps demonstrate what an employer can expect to receive. And it shows that thought process of, okay, I'm working through this stuff and here's how I would approach it. And then soft skills are important. And the good news is that, it's a skill, right? So we can improve it. So really what I'm looking for on the hiring side is I want to understand how someone presents information, understands business risk, that they can speak with sympathy and understanding when they're talking to a customer and presenting that information, and also that they deliver results, not just, some kind of scan report or, some BS, right? Like, I'm interested in actually understanding, like, okay, here's the things to do and how I did them. As far as getting to that point, we do a few different things. Like we did cover some of those. Again, read documentation, read books, find these things online. Soft skills, the one I want to highlight the most are meetup groups. You definitely have some kind of either local ISSA, maybe even a DEF CON group or B-Sides, something that probably meets every month, most likely at least once a quarter, right? Really take a look and see if you can join them. Just say hi. There's some phenomenal people to meet in your local area that will go a long, long way. And then always some good certs you can take a look at. I do recommend things like CCNA, Sec Plus, Net Plus, or an AWS or Microsoft certification because, again, it shows that building side of understanding what people are doing on the configuration end. Now, it does really suck to get started, because nobody's good at it when you start. So I love this quote of sucking at something is the first step to becoming sort of good at something. So just, you got to get started. Don't do the analysis paralysis. And then as far as reporting, we want to prove value, right? So reporting is the most important part because if a customer paid 30 grand for a pen test, the report on its own needs to be worth at least 30 grand or demonstrate that it's worth 30 grand or more, right? So we have to make that value intrinsic and show how do we actually reduce risk and make these things actually clear and realistic, right? All right, I got 1 more minute. We're almost there. So I got a little timeline. So if you want to do this kind of pen testing work, first ask yourself, why do you want to be a pen tester? And then we got to be realistic too, right? Like, what value do I bring today to an organization or to a company? And is that actually realistic? Or am I just thinking that I can provide that value? And I really want everyone to think and look at things like CTFs or CVEs or bug bounties that they could help. And, that does feed into that realistic um, e- evaluation of yourself. And then writing about your knowledge and documenting it in blogs or write ups goes a hugely long way. And again, meetup groups, continuous learning and research. I love reading the CTI reports that CISA or FBI puts out, or things like the DFIR report. When they release those blogs and like that threat intelligence, man, I learn something new every time I read through those, right? So, as far as finishing up, pen testing is not entry level, right? It is very difficult to combine the technical skills, or first having the technical skills on their own, and then combining that with the business communication. Really recommend everyone to kind of build that portfolio of your experience, and really do that writing and publish it, and then just get started, right? Like actually just doing it. And I hope you learned something. Usually I'd spend a little longer talking about this, but absolutely love it. If you have questions, please, feel free to reach out anytime. Absolutely love doing this stuff. It's way too much fun, right? And like when you can actually deliver something like, hey, here's an actual threat driven pen test, it blows people away on everything that they've been missing for years. So 1 minute over. I think I'm okay with it. How do you do,
Thanks.
John?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. That was great. So you're saying pen testing is an entry level? It's like the second time we've heard that this morning at VetSecCon.
It's
There's
weird,
always
right?
going to be an exception where someone's going to give someone a junior chance. But again, most of the time you have to have so much knowledge that a junior pen testing job is not an entry level job into cybersecurity. So this was great. We will definitely consider having you back next year, both for this and Whose Slide Is It?
Thank you.
So super appreciate your time today, Chris. If you have questions, maybe hit them in the Slack or in the comments. We're going to get started with the panel. So thanks so much, Christopher.
Thank you.
All right, I am bringing everybody else onto the stage for our panel. Let me get everybody going here. Brian, let me get an audio check from you.
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good. I wore my VetSec stuff yesterday. I didn't know today was the day. Man,
I saw Chris wearing that shirt and I was like, oh, let me change. I know I got one somewhere.
somebody asked, how do I get VetSec swag? If you'd like to volunteer to stand up a VetSec store and manage and run it, let me or Tyler know, because that's what it's going to take. We are trying to focus on getting you guys benefits and manage some other stuff. All right, we got some slides. Brian, Jason, Michael, Jeremy, thank you for being on the panel today. If you need anything, I'll be in the background, but I'm going to let you take it away.
All right, thank you. So, welcome everyone to this panel. So, there's been this common theme that's been going on in the VetSec Slack and even the industry across. And everyone's like, oh, I got this Security Plus cert. I just got a bachelor's in cyber or some other thing. And they're like, why isn't this working? Why do I not just have a job? I mean, even before the job market took a wild plunge, this was really, really common story. And everyone's asking, like, where is this person who followed this and got to this Shangri-La? And the answer is no one or very few. And so I had this concept I put together of let's get some real people that really transitioned, that can remember their story and coherently explain it. So I want you to see some authentic stories that show people who didn't like directly follow this golden, well-lit path that really doesn't even exist and actually got to where I assume a lot of people here are trying to go. So let me explain. I'm the moderator. Once again, all of us are here as ourselves, so we are not representing our workplaces. I happen to work at Google as a product security engineer, but I'm here as myself, and I believe the same goes for everyone on the panel. You might notice this really common theme that everyone here is a Marine Corps veteran. That was pure coincidence or awesomeness, one or the other. But I think there is actually something to that, and that is that in the Marines, not saying anything about any other branch, but we learn a lot about hard work and discipline and suffering. And these are things that will help you in that path. So, some a fun fact about me. Currently, I'm playing a CTF this weekend, not the vet sec one, and I'm right now number one. Then we have Michael Malvin. He's a senior security analyst, and I'm not going to steal all of his thunder, but it's interesting that he was a multi-time college dropout, but he still got in. And we've all had challenges. It took me 5 times to learn how to program. I mean, I think that's a common thing that as we persevere and we have the willpower to get through. And Jeremy, he's a CISO. He's battled all the way from the help desk to the top of the food chain. That once again shows that there's no golden well-lit path, although I think the help desk to CISO is probably the one that we all think of as, yeah, this is how you become a CISO. But he literally
It might be a slightly bumpier road than that blurb makes it seem. I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah, no story's ever that simple. And then we have Jason Ellers. He works in cybersecurity operations, but he had to go through college twice at least. And then somehow when working on a malware analysis sandbox, he got caught. So I think this all shows that there's a diversity of ways of getting to that end path. I wasn't even trying to become a professional security engineer. I was actually applying to Google to be a software engineer. And they're like, hey, you look like you'd be good at this. They're right. So as we go through this talk, I want you to keep this in the back of your mind as you listen to what each panelist is talking about. The first one is there a unique path, or is there every path unique? Like, what is the element of uniqueness? I think you got an idea of what that is. And there's plan, there's pivoting. Is there a make your own luck, or is it luck happens? I think there's a combination of all of these things. And what are the slam doors that got in your way as you were progressing through your career? So now that I have talked about and went through our slides, I'd like to start with some questions for our panelists. So let's see. So Jason, what is your single most unexpected turn or lucky break, or was it even lucky as you went through your career?
Can you hear me good?
Yeah.
Yay. Okay. Yeah, so I actually really wanted to talk about that bullet. Mine was not lucky at all. There was a lot of deliberate effort that got me into that place to be noticed. And I wanted to talk about that just very briefly, was that I was still active duty when I decided I had to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And in the course of like the last 2 years of active duty, I read dozens of books. I picked up like 4 certs. And then I got out and finished my last year of college. And by moving from San Diego to Vermont to be in an experiential learning center at Champlain College, which I had researched to be in that program to begin with, that's where I was noticed. I was in there doing something with a team of people that were, I was old enough to be their dad, right? But we were building a malware analysis sandbox, and I had my Eagle Globe and Anchor cup sitting there on my desk, and someone had walked through that happened to be the CISO for the largest employer in the state of Vermont, and we hit it off immediately, right? So it was putting myself in that seat. There was no luck involved. Was it cool that that person happened to walk through that day and that she was building a team? Yes, but it was a deliberate thing for me to be prepared for that. It wasn't like somebody came and just said, hey, we want to offer you a job because you're doing cyber.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. And I mean, that really goes into the theme of my life of I always make my own luck. I set the stage and I pray that some fortunate event occurs, but you don't know when that fortunate event's going to be, but you better be ready to catch it like you're in a baseball game. All right, Michael, same question to you, and I'll repeat it just in case in all the conversation you forgot. But what was a single unexpected turn or lucky break in your career that nobody could have ever planned for but came your way?
So this, I would say it's before I got into cybersecurity, like specifically, but I was doing a job as just like mindless data entry, and mindless data entry sucks. So I was automating as much of it as I could, and because I was doing all of the automation, I got noticed by some of the higher ups, and they created a custom position just for me as like a pseudo business analyst, and I was able to kind of build off of that, which then eventually got me my first job in a SOC with the business analyst experience. But it was just because I hated doing mindless work. So I was like, I'm going to learn how to do VBA and automate as much as I can. And someone noticed a bunch of the automated reports and scripts that I was writing. And it just kind of all snowballed from there. So, same thing Jason was saying, kind of create your own luck. You do all the work in the background, nobody's paying attention, and eventually all that work can just pay off in a big way.
I'm also seeing a theme of excellence where both you and Jason excelled at what you did and got noticed. I think that's a key element of how you guys were so successful. So, Jeremy, once again, to our last panelist, but definitely not the least. You're the CISO after all. Would you like to answer the question?
Yeah. For me, I think the common theme that I hear, and it is something that I think is really true, is luck is where preparation meets opportunity, right? So I think everybody here did a lot of work to keep learning, to keep reading, and then when the opportunity came along for the right person to be in the room, for the right place to write an automation, for the right area, right? They were prepared, and those two things led to them being in the right place. For me, right, I think it's sort of a bit of a common theme, right? So I got out of the Marine Corps. I was working kind of second level help desk, and similar deal, right? I was automating some things to make my life easier. I noticed that brought me up into being a sysadmin, and then I was interested in security stuff, so I kept poking at it and built a security response plan as a student employee at UConn. I got my computer science degree. I was at working as a software dev, but I was working on security related kind of projects, right? Someone needed to implement 2FA for the first time because this was 2012, and right, that was starting to actually be a requirement. And because I knew about security, I knew what TOTP was, I built it, right? And I built security experience. That brought me over to Otis Elevator, and same kind of deal where I was working on a security related project, but as a software dev. And when I completed it, they're like, hey, we need to build an AppSec program. Do you want to be the staff engineer to help build it? Hell yes, I do. And now I have my first real cybersecurity engineering position, right? But it's really tempting to say like, oh, it was like being at Otis at the right time. And it was, but it was also all of those little projects beforehand that let me be able to speak really effectively about what it is that we need to do and to build a project plan to get us into the right direction. And I think that's still true today, right? Like just keep volunteering for stuff, right? Keep trying new stuff. And a lot of times people are going to say no to you, like over and over and over and over again. But like it takes one or two yeses to start getting you further in your career.
Thank you. And also, just build on top of that. Sometimes there's no luck involved around an opportunity coming. You can see the opportunity coming. You can think about it many years ahead. So when I worked at a startup, we were going through mergers and acquisitions. I was the most junior engineer hired. And I was like, listen, I got a great position here. I'm going to learn every single important system. Then I'm going to become a manager. And one day, all those bozos, great people above me, they're going to go. And they're going to have a difficult decision, and I'm going to make it easy for them. And I became the director of engineering through that approach. But I just planned, and I put in the years, literally 4 or 5 years of concerted effort to make that happen. And if you look at the opportunities coming ahead of you years out, you might see something like that. But it's all very personal and to your situation and very bespoke. And you're the best person to figure that out. So, Michael, I think you're probably the best one to answer this one. And I think there's people that haven't had a lucky break. And you've gone through some tough times. You've had to deal with manual labor. Not that, anyone who's been a Marine veteran hasn't, but I, and as a civilian, and they're maybe not in security right now, and they're trying to work their way through to a better life, probably to provide for themselves or their family, have a better life in general, enjoy their work better. I mean, I really did not, do not miss working in a yard off of Craigslist myself. So, for those people, what was a mental shift or key event that helped you get on the right track and that eventually led you into cyber?
Uh, Honestly, it was just doing the work. So when I got out in 2012, and like I had the idea of, well, I'll go to college. I'll do like network security because I didn't call it cyber back then. And turns out that I didn't really have like the motivation to stick with everything and follow through on it. And so I just kind of wandered around, didn't do a whole lot. Got caught up in one project it was like a NASA project with the aerospace team, which kind of gave me some focus, but also too much focus on that. And then I was ignoring my other classes, which that was the first time I failed college. Um, but yeah, it was eventually just, I got sick of doing nothing realistically. Like I kind of missed that like mission that we all used to have. I was just kind of going through the motions day by day, not really doing anything. And I just was over it and started just put my head down, do the work. Started studying more, studying on my own time, picking up different classes, different certs, doing CTFs, the whole 9 yards that we preach day in and day out around here. But yeah, it's just changing my mindset to time to do the work.
Do you feel like your time in the Marines, like something came back to you that put you in the right mindset?
I think definitely because like before the Marines, that there would not have been the mindset of like, well, it's time to work. That just didn't exist for me. I was a bum back in the day. I didn't do anything if I didn't have to. So
Yeah,
I think
I,
definitely being able to just self motivate. Hey, it's work time. Let's go to work.
yeah. And one of the things the Marines does that I think people in other branches, even if you don't feel like you have all that same background, there's a mental trick you can pull. And I know it sounds corny, but it's called the positive affirmation. You're basically training your brain like an AI that, wow, I can do this thing, even if it's totally fake. You're faking it till you make it, and your brain suddenly wants to do that thing. And that's kind of what Michael is doing. And we have the cheat code of the Marines. And yeah, I'm sure the other branches have their similar approaches. But if you don't feel that connection with it, try positive affirmation. I mean, I know it's the corniest thing and I laugh at it, but even I do it and it's great. I mean, if you're like sick with COVID and you're having a hard time, it happened. That's what I use. So, Jeremy, I'd like to switch over to you and you become the CISO, and we all say that's like, oh, that's this amazing thing, like 1 in a million people, but impossible. But you've done it, and you transitioned from individual contributor all the way up to there. And can you talk about that transition and when was the moment that you realized not only was it possible, but you wanted it?
That's a great question. And I think part of the reason it's a great question is because there were times where I did aggressively want it and was pushing towards it. And there were also times where I really had to ask myself whether or not it's something I wanted. And I think it's still something I ask myself on a regular basis, if I'm honest, because um, management's a double-edged sword, right? For me, I think the mantra of and I actually had a leader say this to me in the Marine Corps, right? Don't get mad, get promoted, right? You're pissed off at something, right? But it's something that could be changed, right? Because you think you could do it better. Put yourself in the position to do it better, but you're going to be responsible for it. That's that's a double-edged sword, right? Because now you are also responsible for it. So, and especially that compounds nowadays with where we see that being a CISO also carries with it legal and financial risks, right? I have to give my reports to the board, and I have to give my reports to, where I work for Varo Bank. We're a regulated bank, right? Which means that my reports are also going to federal regulators, right? There's real moral, professional, ethical pitfalls to be found along the way, right? And keeping yourself, right, true to what it is that you're saying, and making sure that you are giving the real truth, even when it's very hard to do, even when there's pressure to not, it's not easy, to be blunt. But and then the downsides to it also, right? I really love what I do, but I don't get as much hands-on keyboard time as I used to, right? I deal more time in spreadsheets and Google Docs than I do in a terminal at this point. And some days that is unfortunate and sad. And I think for me, it's worth it. But it doesn't have to be your career path. And I've known some wonderful people who have just chosen very intelligently for them, right? To know themselves, to say, I want to stay on that IC route. Or they're willing to be a manager, but one of those managers that's really a manager in name, right? They're really just the staff or the principal level engineer in charge of a team, right? And they want to keep doing that technical piece of things and doing more hands-on keyboard. And know yourself, right? Know what it is that you're going for. I found my path, and I'm glad that I'm here, but it doesn't have to be the one that you choose. And it's not going to be necessarily the one that makes you the happiest. And those are two very different things.
Thank you. So I think your advice is great. And I think people are probably like here in their career. And that's advice for like when they're way up here in their career. For people who are much more earlier on, and they're trying to figure out, how do I get to that middle point where I might even be able to take a grasp at that advice? What would
Yeah.
you advise them to start thinking about if they want to become a CISO, but they're still maybe help desk and actually entry level in cyber with that first hands-on keyboard job?
Yeah, I would say it's actually really similar to the military, right? When you go before you go into a situation, right? Any kind of operation, right? You need to know your job, the job next to you, and the job above you, right? And that's going to be true equally in the, help desk, right? You might be answering tickets for IAM tickets, right? If it's really entry level, right? And the person next to you is doing file share stuff. Like if that person's out sick, you better be prepared to answer their help desk tickets, right? And you should be paying attention to and trying to learn the job of the person who is, right, managing the help desk, because I guarantee you, they're doing more than just managing the help desk. And that's true if you're in a SOC. That's true if you're an application security engineer. You should be learning what the cloud security engineers are doing, right? And what that, maybe that mid-level manager is doing, coordinating how those two things work together. So if you continue to do that all the time, right, because that'll open you up to be the position where you get hired, right, where you get promoted into that manager position. Well, now you have more jobs to learn. You should already know the ones beneath you. There's probably one you didn't. There's a new manager role for you to learn and a new senior leader position to learn, right? And I'm still very much in that mode. There's always more to learn. I'm learning more about the business and business leader roles than I thought I would ever have to, right? But it was true, consistently working up.
Thank you, Jeremy. So, Jason, you worked on a malware analysis sandbox while you were still going through college, and that helped you get noticed. And there was a time when the home lab was a thing or some self-initiated project. And now here we are, 2025, in a world of AI, in a world of cloud. How do you feel that has changed, remained the same, or drifted? And what lens should someone trying to build up that same experience consider?
Wow, Brian. What a question. Well, I know there's no better way to learn than being hands-on. And there's a dynamic that's been talked about during this conference about, AI is not going to replace people. It's going to replace people that don't accept and use AI, right? I think there's value in using AI as a tool to learn or or like give a resource to validate, but there's absolutely some hands-on things, like, so as operations, like right now, there's a couple of pieces that kind of fit around this that I'd like to just share. Is that one of them is, we're trying to build the security baseline around people that want to use AI, right? But then I was also asked, hey, how can AI help our engineers? How can AI help our analysts, our security analysts, right? And how can AI help us build and write policy? So we're kind of looking at like the different advantages of this, and kind of I had to do I didn't have to, I took an initiative to basically look at all the Microsoft Learn courses for Microsoft Security Copilot, for example, right? And write out, these are all the different ways that a security analyst can do their job better using Microsoft Security Copilot, for example, right? Or when I'm doing my own investigations, I use ChatGPT. I'm a paid subscriber. I use it daily, right? Not to get the answers, but to do whatever the heck I'm doing, right? Which I have some fun stories about what some of that is. But one of the concepts was when I'm answering a question around policy, or around, like, say, a risk management framework question for different controls and stuff, I tell them, I said, hey, I asked AI this question. It already knows my context about what I do, and it gave me these answers, and I validated these answers are correct. Does this help? You know what I mean? And I think the same thing can be applied to people that are learning in, like, whether they're going to build a malware analysis sandbox, or whether they're going to do, digital forensic analysis of Amazon Echo. I did that too, right? As part of that role I was doing. Lots of really, fun ways that people, I think, can leverage and use AI and learning about the things. And just the last piece of that I want to talk about is that, like, I belong to academia. I was an online adjunct professor at one point for cybersecurity stuff. And I've also been professional services director of that experiential learning center. So I can tell you kind of how we've been trying to leverage that. And we've had discussions in academia about how can we teach cybersecurity people to leverage AI and not get, I guess, stuck behind it, right? Because at some point, just by the analysis of using for analysts, for example, and Michael's probably completely different than what this is, but some young people do this. Not saying you're not young there, sir. Is that they become good at asking ChatGPT the questions, but they don't know where to go to find it if they weren't using that tool, right? Like, you got sign-in logs, for example, right? You can, if it's all configured correctly and architected correctly, you can ask it and it'll pull it up for you, right? If you're using the licensing and all those things, all those things have to be in place. But what we don't want people to do is take it for granted that if it gave you no answer, that there's no answer. You got to find it. You got to know where to look. So you have to educate yourself.
That makes a lot of sense. And if you think about it, sometimes the AI, not sometimes, all the time, it misses key elements of the data. And when I'm looking at the output of the AI, it's almost like in the Matrix where you have the zeros and the ones, you're like lady in the red dress. Using my experience, I'm able to look at what the AI is doing. I'm like, you made a mistake here. And I adjust my prompts, and then we get to the answer right away. But if I didn't have the grounding and skills, I wouldn't be able to tell it what to do. So you kind of have to, crawl, walk, run AI.
Yeah, like added after the fact. Don't rely on it from the very beginning, or you'll be lost.
Exactly. And if you think about the next wave of people that are coming into the industry, if they never learn how to crawl, walk, and run, they may hit a wall and never get their job. Jeremy, you had something to add?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, right? And one of the areas where I've seen it, it's related, it be effective is when you're starting to work cross-platform you can use it as a way to enhance your ability to communicate. And one of the areas where I see this is, I have at least one application security engineer in my team, and he needs to sometimes whip together a proof of concept for a change in someone else's code, right? But using AI in that way to build something and communicating like, look, I know this is not perfect, but this is a way for us to get started to look at the same thing for, AppSec and security to communicate with the dev teams without having to spend all of that time to learn their code base is something we've had particularly effective, right, to enhance that communication.
Thank you. So for the next set of questions, they're going to be to all the panelists. And if you want to answer, just hit the little hand button. And I think the R key will also raise it. Yeah, the R key. So since we're all veterans, we can all answer this one. The military gave us all these skills. We've gone through boot camp, training with our MOS. Since we're all Marines, I can say that. We've gone through fleet, we've gone through deployments, and we've had more training than the government honestly should ever give to a single individual, until millions of dollars put into each one of us. So we've gotten a bunch of skills, and when you think about, like, what's a skill that helped you in your career, and what's one skill or behavior that you had to unlearn to move forward in your career? All right, and we got Jason up first.
I'm gonna offer to answer every question you have, but I'm gonna play fair. I was talking to a onboarder for a digital forensics and incident response firm in the past, in one of my jobs I had, and they asked me, like, what is my favorite tool, right? And people are going to come up with like a digital forensics tool or an incident response tool or some sort of actual tangible tool, right? I told them my favorite tool is search, right? Because if you know how to search, you don't have to know all the answers, right? It comes down to, like, if you're doing prompt engineering and learning how to do that to be able to use AI better, same concept, right? Or do you know how to search inside a tool to find a log? Or do you know how to search those logs? Or do you know how to search in Google to find the Microsoft Learn document? That my client uses Microsoft, so I'm kind of, it's all in my head, right? But I told them search, because if I know how to use a triage tool, right, I can search for the things and I know exactly what I'm looking for, right? And if I don't know what I'm looking for, I can search to find what I'm looking for. So I always tell them that search was been, I guess, something I learned, I guess, on active duty, because someone said read the effing manual in the last session, right? And I said I had an E7, a gunnery sergeant that was at my shop, and I was a crypto tech, right? And I was the only crypto tech in the shop. I was a lance corporal, and when I went up and I was asking these process questions, he literally threw the manual at me, the 4700. I remember it to this day. It was a big, thick book. Threw it at me, right, and said, read the effing manual. He didn't say effing, no. He said, read the fucking manual. You know what I mean? And that, from that point forward, reading and kind of really stuck with me. It's like, holy crap, I can actually be just like the people above me if I read, right? I can be in the positions of these other people, and I can learn to do these things if I just read the freaking manual. You know what I mean? And so, like, the reading and searching through documents, right? So, like, I have smart ways of looking through documents. I have a bunch of digital documents. I control F into everything, and I can find things very quickly. And it helped with my academic research. It helped with everything, right? So search was my favorite thing, and that's really what I learned. I think active duties helped me do that.
I remember before AI, we had to Google everything.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. When I was a junior lance corporal, my squad leader's like, you're gonna do some education. You're gonna learn how to write a mission report. I was like, all right. So I got the book out and I read it and I produced it. And it's like, wow, this looks like something an officer would do. How did you figure this out? I was like, I read the book. So Jeremy, would you like to answer the question next?
Yeah. First, I think, what is your favorite tool is an awesome question. I'm 1,000% going to steal that. And I'm gonna steal the question a little bit. I'm gonna be like, mine is a flowchart, because for me, right, and at least through my career path where working in pen testing, but especially the AppSec side of things, understanding the flow of data and the business logic at the different check marks was like everything. And I think it's carried its way well into my role now, where I'm mapping business logic, but it's the same kind of deal. For me, the thing that I learned in the military that I carry over more than anything else is how to disagree and commit. I'm never going to get everything I want. Security is never going to get everything that they want, right? Learning how to not take it personally, how to say, this is what I think we should do, right? Compromise, or sometimes just not get it and let that roll off your back and keep going on with the mission is something that I see a lot of people fail at. They take it personally. They get hung up on it. They can't let it go that they didn't implement passkeys in this quarter, and they're mad about it. And it's like, don't get mad about it. This is not personal. This is just a business decision. We'll get it in the next one. We'll get it in 3 quarters from now. It doesn't matter. We're going to keep working on it. We're going to keep plugging away. And as long as we're making progress, as long as we're moving, right, things are okay. Obviously there's a line to draw there where sometimes it's no longer okay. But disagree and commit, that's that, and not taking it personally, that's something that I think I thank the military for.
Yeah, and just to go off of that, we're all human beings and we're going to be angry no matter what, and you still need to deal with that. There's a professional way to deal with it and an unprofessional way to deal with it, and there may be a bias from our experiences. I was a grunt, so I'm more experienced with the unprofessional way of exposing your anger. That's something I had to unlearn, and that was very tough and expensive lesson on multiple occasions. I've gotten through it, but I hope no one else has to go through that experience. Michael, would you like to answer the question next?
Yeah, I'm gonna probably go a slightly different way, into the less glamorous side of our work. So the nature of IT, especially around my level, maybe not the CISO level. I'm not quite that fancy yet. We're on call a lot. If something breaks, doesn't matter what time it is, you got to fix it. So the ability to work well while tired is the big one for me. Especially right now, I'm covering the graveyard shift. So like right now, it's like 19 hours into my day. Just being able to work and stay focused while you're tired is a huge thing, especially in IT, because you never know when something's going to break. And when it breaks, if it's critical, it needs to be fixed yesterday.
So how do you do it?
I have a cup of coffee next to me that holds half a pot.
All right. Yeah, that's pretty much what I do too.
Lots of caffeine and focus. I don't know, little touch of ADHD.
Make sure I
think also though,
hyperfocus.
Yeah,
just get lost in it.
When you're tired, you're following playbooks and routines that you know and you've practiced.
Yeah.
I think that ties into it. Working well when you're tired for sure. Like, how many security incidents happen at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday? Like, none. Right? Like, how many happen at 3 a.m. on a Sunday? All of them, it seems like, So, but having the practice, having the run books, having practice like you're going to play, like, makes you way more effective when you're tired.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there's also a cheat code that I've been working on to help me, because I don't have the urgency of like some on-call, but if I'm developing software and I know this is going to be like an all-day thing, a marathon, you can spend a lot of mental energy writing software and be like dead tired after an hour or two. And I'm like, how do I do this? And I'm like, like vibe coding, right? But you can't just vibe code, because that's going to be a disaster. What I do is like I break it down to very menial tasks. And I'm more of a project manager, and I use my experience to make very small tasks. And I spend my mental energy describing the tasks and not so much doing the hard work. And then I just review it because I'm an expert practitioner and I can get through it very fast. And that way my mental energy can last the whole day, and I do pretty much 100 days of work in one day by following that kind of strategy of rationing my mental energy and applying leverage and productivity. So, I mean, figuring out how to get productivity out of yourself through AI may actually be another way. Jason.
I just wanted to say that I attribute my ability to get things done on good rest, right? I sleep well at night, but I have to orient my life to that. And one example kind of stems off of what Michael was talking about is at one point I was an analyst. At one point I was a senior analyst at a digital forensics and instant response firm, right? It was 50 to 60 hours a week. It was 3 a.m. calls, as Jeremy was talking about, right? It's like, hey, who's going to jump on this call to work this person through their ransomware incident? Right? Like that literally is a field and it's work. Well, that 50 to 60 hours a week for me didn't fit. Right. So when it was time to make a decision for that, like I literally left that company. I was doing fine at the company, but I left that company for that job in academia at 50% pay than what I was making because I needed a change. And then you had talked earlier about, what was your vision of what you wanted to do? That's when I learned I didn't want to do incident response that much anymore. If I did, I wanted to kind of manage it. But then I was also looking at the niche because I had a role at one point where I was basically like a CISO. And I realized I didn't want to do what Jeremy does either. You know what I mean? So I had to deliberately do the work to try to find a role that I like to do. And I had learned over the course of doing those things, the analyst things and that type of a function as an engineer. I don't identify as an engineer, by the way, right? And that I don't identify either as a CISO, but I like to be that person behind the scenes. I figured out who I was, and I found a role that fits what I like to do, so that I can rest at night and I can go, 6:30 to 2:30 every day, Monday through Friday. That's the way I want it, and that's what I do. But it certainly didn't start overnight.
I wanted to add on to that a touch, right? I think one of the other things I learned that was really important in the military is how to take care of my people, right? Also, I try to live by, right? Success is theirs, failure is mine. But that also ties into what you're talking about being tired and being burnt out. And one of the things that I know is that the members of my team didn't join to do DFIR work, which, by the way, God bless anybody who works in that field because I don't know how, right? I wouldn't be able to. Right. So like when we do have an incident, right? And I do expect that like, hey, what's up, guys? We're working until this is done, right? That's until we have containment and until we have recovery, right? But they didn't sign up to work 60 hours a week, right? Making sure that I get them comp time, right? On the books or off the books to make sure that they get their rest so that they get their time with their family because they could go work 80 hours a week DFIR and probably make more money, right? But they chose not to. They chose to be at the bank and maintaining and making sure that I get them that work-life balance and making sure that we avoid burnout is like that's actually a huge part of my job is to protect them from the work.
Cool. Thank you. So I'm going to pivot a little bit to, I think, a more fun topic for this conference, which is the veteran community. Each one of us has likely been impacted by just being able to talk to other veterans and connect, and especially like-minded veterans. It's hard for me to find another veteran that's a grunt in cybersecurity, let me tell you. Like there's all of one, me. I mean, I think there's like a couple others. But how has the Veterans Network, especially VetSec, helped you in your career? And how do you think others just coming into it should view the opportunity to connect with veterans and how to connect with veterans to maybe greedily advance themselves, but also eventually, hopefully, give back? I can start.
I'm happy to.
Oh, yeah.
I bounce questions off this community all the time. Sometimes it's I heard something from maybe a member of my team or maybe from another org, and I'm like, does that make sense? Like, am I taking crazy pills? That doesn't sound right. But like using that sounding board of the other members of this to remember things. Then also, right, the security underground is real, right? There's lots of really good on the record threat intel sharing programs, but there's also a lot of usefulness in being able to throw a message out there and be like, anyone else seeing this weird pattern, right? And getting that feedback right off the books. Right now, nobody's sharing anything that they shouldn't, right? But people being very candid about like, yeah, no, this is sucking. This is getting past all the things. Both of those two things are extremely helpful, and getting those different perspectives from, and especially because I'm in banking, right? I can find lots of bank people to talk to at any time. It's really hard to find people who are maybe in like manufacturing, right? And they face different things and they approach things in different ways, even though we're all in cybersecurity. So that community of sharing is what I find to be incredibly useful.
So what you said about candidness reminds me of a major reoccurring theme that I've seen in VetSec. And I guarantee you someone listening is hopefully going to get saved by this advice. We are very candid because we want to help you. We love you guys in a totally military oriented way. We want you to be very successful in life. We want you to reflect us. Even as amazing as we are, we've been exactly where you are at some point. And we always get people coming in for advice and they're like, man, everything you're telling me is that I'm wrong. That I'm doing everything possibly in the wrong direction, and I'm going to find all the reasons you're wrong for saying I'm wrong. And that is a path of personal destruction. And you know, I love my sister, but I don't talk to my sister anymore for a reason. And I don't want to love you like I love my sister. I want to love you like someone that I actually talk to. And I want you to take the advice, think critically, apply your situation, but don't feel like it's an attack. Feel like it's an opportunity to reassess yourself. It's very common resume, very common in education. This will save someone so much grief and hopefully put you on a path towards making money that you never thought you could make. Jason.
Yeah, Jeremy said something that resonated. You said something that resonated. Everyone said everything that's resonated. There's the piece that I like. I think the most is the mentoring channel. I've been a mentor a couple years. There's about 60 or 70 folks like these guys on this call that are mentoring others or paying it forward in ways that like I didn't know. Oh, let me take that little hand down. I didn't know existed before I came to VetSec, and you know there is perspective that comes from being amongst your people that have a common background in military, for example, right? I've learned like I use VetSec as a like an information source. Not necessarily do I ask the questions, but I like to keep a pulse on what people are talking about for the relevance. I like to understand the different challenges that people are going through. That's in the and you hear it all the time, and it kind of helps you kind of orient yourself, because otherwise, I live in the state of Vermont in a log cabin. Kind of see the wood on the wall behind me here. But I live in a state of Vermont. Like my best friend is a retired Navy chief, but he doesn't do cyber, right? And there's very few other people in the state that do this. So this is my community, right? I'm sitting in my chair on my couch right now in my home, participating in my community, right? So like it's literally that much and that big of a part of my life. And I don't know how I would, necessarily connect in those ways if this organization didn't exist. So I'm very grateful. The mentoring thing's huge. Keeping the pulse check on what folks are doing. That's what I think about VetSec.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback off of Jason a bit, it's the community is a big thing for me because I'm in probably not quite as rural as you are. Like I can get to a city in a reasonable amount of time. Doesn't sound like you can. But yeah, I don't know a single person outside of my office that does what I do within 200 miles of me. So there's nobody for me to go talk to if I want to catch up on what the newest intrusions are that's going on. Or like the big thing for me to go along with the community aspect is the networking. What other opportunity do I have? I'm a log monkey in a basement of a government building. Like we have a window, it's like this big. When do I get to sit down with a CISO and just bullshit for a while? I could do that at VetSec any time of the day. But in this tiny little town that I live in, there's no chance I'd get that opportunity anywhere else.
Yeah, and I think I could ground this on a real story that happened to me. So I've been laid off 5 times in the tech recession, which is probably some kind of world record. And I'm in a community where I can talk to people and be vulnerable, and we get it. I mean, getting laid off 5 times is kind of crazy, don't get me wrong, but people have been laid off and we know each other. I've gone to CTS with other VetSec members, and when I needed a job, this last one, really hard economy, I got a referral of Google from someone. And then I had multiple people who know me because I've participated and done things who are able to say really great things. I mean, that's not the only way you get a job, but um, being able to have all that positive feedback and connections and networking can unlock opportunities I was not planning for. And this was a huge lifeline. Not that it was the only job offer I had, but it was the one I took. And, I'm not here as a Google employee, but as myself, but having this network of people that just unlocks opportunities and participating and going a little bit above and beyond could potentially open up doors, because people do need to say something nice about you if they're going to refer you. Otherwise, it goes kind of into the netherworld.
Can we explore that path, Brian? Like, I was really hoping we could share some perspectives on how people got roles that maybe didn't go through the application path. And I would love to, because I know the title of this chat. I would love to just kind of
How
start.
did that happen?
Yeah, because I think it's compelling, right? Like I've never had to use a resume. I've had 8 jobs outside of the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
I would love to,
So,
kind of share perspective on that.
so it was still a referral. So I did have to submit, and I submitted to be a software engineer. And then did some like assessment, and then I got positions filled. I was like, all right. And I got a couple other job offers. Literally got a CTO job offer on a Friday morning. I was very excited. I was like, all right, this is the one. And then Friday evening, again, email from Google will be like, hey, would you like to apply for a job? This manager looked at your resume. She really likes you. I thought it was AI. Turns out she actually just literally went through all the resumes of people that applied, and she liked my profile. So I was referred. And I was like, you got to do this really fast. And basically moved at warp speed, even for any other company. It closed off a job in 3 weeks from first discussion to ink on paper. But my profile that I built up, all the people that I worked with at VetSec who are able to say really nice things about me in the feedback section, and then also annihilating the interview. That's key. You always got to annihilate the interview. That's how I got through. But without having that referral from someone, I wouldn't have had that positive signal that caused someone to look at my resume when they were literally mining for diamonds in the mine of resume stacks. So that's how it worked out for me. And I mean, I was just trying to be an engineer or CTO, I guess, but ended up working at Google, and I'm really happy with it. And there is no blueprint. I personally was using security as a way to build myself up as a software engineer, to be a very security minded engineer, and it was working really great for me. But so great that I ended going full security. So I think this is a good point for us to take some questions from the audience. If anyone has any questions, you can put it on the stage chat and I will see it. And anyone on the panel is also free to just chime in. While we are waiting, just wanted to remind people, I think there's still a CTF going on, right? Yeah, and I mean, I was playing the NCL CTF right now, well, up until 1 a.m. when I finished all the questions, but CTFs are another way. I moved up in the world. I've won multiple CTFs, and putting that on your resume will get some attention. I mean, even if you don't win, if you're like top X% and you're going for a help desk to something else, being in top 10, 15, 20% could move the needle. So I'm not seeing any questions in stage. Let me see if there's anything in the event.
I mean, if you don't mind, I'll make a comment while we're waiting for any questions.
Yeah.
CTFs are very interesting to me as somebody who does hiring. I don't hire a lot of red team people. I actually hire much more blue focused and outsource red. CTFs are cool, and I think CTFs show that somebody has the right mind to think about where security fails, but they're not necessarily what it is that I look for when I'm hiring. I look much more for people that understand the basics and understand how to implement the basics all the time. That's the number one thing that it is that I look for across all the roles that I hire. Right. And then it gets a little more specific. Of AppSec, I'm looking for somebody who understands CI pipelines and things like that, but it's still the basics of their domain knowledge, right? Being able to speak intelligently about all of the basics and how you're going to make sure that they're done correctly, to me, is the most important thing. And like literally talking about that, right? Some of those elements on your resume can be a huge win. Like a good example would be recently hiring for a security engineer for patch management, right? Somebody talking about the fact that they met their SLAs, right? And they knew, and their inventory system, right? Those bullet points being on their resume told me that this isn't somebody that I'm going to have to teach, hey, these are the reports that I need you to write, right? These are the things I need you to pay attention. They already knew what an inventory management system was, how to work with it, and how to track that back to their SLAs. Like for a senior engineer, like perfect. Like that bumped him right to the top more than a lot of other things would have.
Yeah, and I mean, just as an individual contributor, there are so many skills that I know that I'm not able to consistently practice, but odd ones will always come up. And if I want to stay sharp, I need to use them somehow. And CTFs are a great way to do it. I really don't like JQ, but every once in a while I'm forced to use it. And now with AI, it's a lot easier. Don't get me wrong, but you still need to know what these tools can do in order to tell the AI what you want. Mm-hmm. And these CTFs force you to do it. You absolutely need to do it. I think the Cyber Skyline platform is great. I personally recommend it. I'm sure the Meta CTF is also good. You should do that too. Jason,
can I put a plug in for TryHackMe? I'll tell you why.
Good one.
Right? I'll tell you why. So in VetSec a couple years ago, I think it was. We've been around here a while, right? A couple years ago, people were asking about what the value of TryHackMe was, or they were asking about, certain things that had to do with like general analyst tools or engineering concepts or all those types of things, or threat hunting or whatever the heck they were talking about, right? And so I was like, okay, I want to be able to be valid in my conversations about this, especially when I had mentees asking me. So I was like, okay, let me go ahead and TryHackMe. And I was like, hey, this is fun, right? So I got a subscription, and like 2 months later, I'm in top 1%, but that's pretty easy to do there, right? But the value was like really good. So to stay relevant, like you said, Brian, about a year later, I created a new account and I went back in and I didn't look anything up, right? And I saw how far I could get then. It's only in top 3%, but I ran out of time. I stopped. But that's, that the relevance is absolutely key, right? It's like, I didn't know what my career was going to be next, right? I knew I didn't want to be a CISO, basically, right? And I like being an analyst, right? And I do it right now as part of my thing. But like, yeah, like I was like, well, how can I find some platform that can help keep me relevant? And there's a lot of tools out there, and VetSec talks about them all the time. But TryHackMe was the one that I chose, and so I just want to put a plug in there for that.
All right. Yeah, so I think we're pretty much out of time, and thank you everyone for coming for the panel. I'll try to make some of these huddles. It's a little harder. I have kids, but I'm sure some of us will pop up as huddles occur every week. You never know who you're going to get.
I was going to ask one question real quick, because I think, Brian, you were sort of alluding to the fact of like CTFs might help you stand out more like as a junior applicant, right? You might not have a lot of experience. We get these questions all the time. So, Jeremy, it sounds like you do quite a bit of hiring. So, what is one thing when you're spending 10 seconds on the resume that helps someone stand out for some of these junior roles?
Yeah, it's a great question. It depends a little bit on what the role is. If I'm looking for somebody who's aiming for that SOC engineer analyst on the blue team side, right? I'm looking for somebody who has the right tool names, right? And like not specifically what it is that my bank is using, but the stuff that's in the same ballpark, right? If I'm looking for somebody who's going to be managing endpoints, you know what I mean? Like I'm looking for SCCM, I'm looking for Jamf, I'm looking for Conji, I'm looking for Intune, right? I'm looking for those things, right? And then what it is that you did it in a measurable way, right? If you can tell me, hey, we deployed this and we rolled out to, 97% compliance, that looks fantastic, right? Tell me about that. That makes me want to have a conversation with you about what that looked like.
Awesome. All right, I think we're out of time. I don't see any other questions anywhere. This was a great panel. Thank you all so much for your time. I really like the diversity on this panel. That was super great to hear from different people from different branches. So we'll try to make sure we continue that next year, because you all are invited next year for the U.S. Marine Corps career panel, as well, as we will call it. Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody who's still tuning in today. We are going to be on a 30-minute lunch break. And at 1 p.m. Eastern, you will be hearing from your chairman of VetSec, Tyler Hardy. And he's giving a presentation all about pugs, I think, is what's on the schedule. So get ready for that. But we will take a little lunch break or maybe brunch break if you're out on the West Coast. So we'll be back at 12:30 Eastern.